Reportedly, Trump is trying to hold more events, and I think that answers one of the questions I've had, which is why are these going more poorly and more poorly every time? I think it's because he gets tired, and then he's less able to keep himself together. And this latest speech is no exception. Charlotte, North Carolina, accepting the endorsement of the Fraternal Order of Police, and we'll just jump into a short clip.
God bless you. God bless. God bless.
And God bless. Then he said this.
To me, the number one thing that I get spoken to by the people, and I meet so many people, is crime. I mean, they can't believe it. They can't walk out of their apartments and buy a loaf of bread without getting mugged or rapped or shot. You look at Chicago.
Rapped? Did he mean to say raped, or am I just being dumb? And, of course, if he is trying to run on crime being bad now, then what does that say about all of his presidency? Because even excluding the pandemic era spike, crime was higher than it currently is, and things are historically really, really safe in the United States. Then you have this.
People, while they live in safety, in many cases behind walls. You know that? Nancy Pelosi has a big wall wrapped around her house. Of course, it didn't help too much with the problem she had, did it? People.
So he's making another joke. Another joke about husband of Nancy Pelosi, Paul Pelosi, being attacked by a right-wing lunatic who bashed in Paul Pelosi's head with a hammer, almost killed him. Trump has made these jokes times in the past, and when he's in a rally, the crowd will go, ha ha ha, yeah, the wall didn't work for Nancy Pelosi there. I don't even know if she has a quote-unquote wall around her house, but isn't it crazy that simultaneously he can prove how vile he is and make the opposite argument than the one he was trying to make? He likes to say walls work. See, even Nancy Pelosi has a wall. That's why his wall is awesome. But he just made the point that it doesn't work. And he said this.
You can't even go to a pharmacy without everything being...
I'm sorry. What is this lower third chyron? Newsmax says Trump calls out crime crisis in Democratic-run cities. Crime has been plummeting and is near more than 50-year lows. And is lower than it was under Trump. I can repeat it a million times and they keep saying it. All rational people can continue to fact check Trump and he'll just keep living in an alternate universe.
You can't even go to a pharmacy without everything being locked behind glass. The new thing in New York, you go to a pharmacy to buy aspirin, to buy a toothbrush, and it takes you 45 minutes to get a clerk to open up the glass because people are walking in just taking as much as they want. I don't know if you know that.
The glass things can be a major inconvenience for sure. Number one, when was the last time Trump went into a pharmacy himself? Okay. But number two, we addressed previously the shoplifting, sort of the manufacturing of that perceived crisis. And while we should always want to minimize shoplifting, and if the glass thing works for some stores, but then some of them I've heard that actually discourages people from buying things, so they've stopped doing that. But they can make those decisions, and we all, right, left, and center, can agree that can be inconvenient. Let's try to address shoplifting where it happens, but it's actually not a crisis. And it's about where it's been for quite some time, even going back under Trump. So again, if it's a crisis now, then it was a crisis then. Then you have him upset about, I guess, Biden's golfing.
And he's a 6 handicap, yeah. You ever see him swing? He goes like... The ball goes 3 yards if he's lucky, if it doesn't go backwards.
You're running against Kamala Harris. He keeps bringing him up. And I think at this speech, he was spitballing which names he should call Biden. Should we do Sleepy Joe or Crooked Joe? And again, a part of me just wants to root it on. Yeah, keep going. Run against the wrong person more. Complain about how you wish you were running against him. It's not fair that he's no longer the nominee. I spent all this money lying, saying things about him. Then if you didn't already have justification to vote against Trump, he gave you another reason here.
The appeals court ruled today that Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s name should be taken off the ballot. And that sounds like a bad thing for him. It's not. It's actually a great thing. He's an incredible team player, and he didn't want anybody to be voting his name because, as you know, he fully endorsed us. He's with us. He's going to be watching out for women's health and everybody's health, and got a lot of...
So if you want Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to be in charge of looking out for women's health in a Trump administration, then vote Trump. If you'd prefer not that, then don't vote for Trump. Then he pushes election lies. Actually, before playing this, I always give these reminders at the end of segments, but I understand a smaller portion of the audience is watching all the way at the bitter end of a segment. So let me quickly do some housekeeping things. Number one, there's a survey in the description of this video I'd love for you to fill out, giving us a sense of an idea we have, if it could work, and if so, where. Number two, donate to Kamala Harris's campaign. We're trying to raise $1 million by the time the channel gets to 1 million subscribers. I'll give you an update on the numbers on that very soon. Donate there, whatever you feel comfortable with. Become a member by clicking the join button below. It's a great time. I went through some bloopers in the last bonus show, giving the audience members an example of, or a few examples of what things look like right before we actually start doing a segment, but when the cameras are still rolling. Here's more from.
Crazy. And I hope you, as the greatest people, just as great as there is anybody in our country, I hope you watch for voter fraud. So it starts early, it starts in a week. But I hope you can watch, and you're all over the place. Watch for the voter fraud, because we win. Without voter fraud, we win so easily.
It's so dangerous, so inaccurate, so ludicrous, so repetitive, right? Oof. Here's more.
It is true, though. She's got no votes, and now she's running, so she explained that one. It's not the Democratic way. It's not a Democrat. They call it the Democratic Party because it sounds so nice. I call it the Democrat Party. It's actually the Democrat Party. They ought to change the name. They're always arguing that. I always call it it's called Democrat Party. Democratic sounds so beautiful, the Democratic Party. It's even nicer in a speech. But they ought to change the name instead of complaining.
You're just wrong. The name of the party is the Democratic Party as it was established, and then members of that party are called Democrats. But whatever. You still haven't learned how to pronounce Kamala Harris's name correctly, or you purposely do it incorrectly, so why should I expect you to get that correct? He said this.
Everyone's always talking about these terrible countries to live in, that regime and this or that. But those countries don't have crime like we do. Not even close.
Let me address that in a second. Also, just because I made the bonus show plug, it popped in my mind to say, I know some of you, if you just watch segments, as they get uploaded, you might think, why didn't Luke talk about this? For example, the New York governor, the Chinese spy story, or we recently discussed in the bonus show, the Megyn Kelly interview with people who work with Tim Walz. And if you feel like I'd like to hear about some other things that I haven't heard on the main show, that's one of the places we do it. And we can sort of, in that format, rapid fire, go through some things and have really interesting discussions there. But Trump, something that MAGA's gotten really fixated on is, hey, if democracy's so good, why do we have problems here? Or, hey, if authoritarianism is so bad, why are grocery stores in Tucker Carlson in Russia so nice? Now, you can even debunk those claims by themselves. Like, whenever Tucker Carlson goes to very specific parts of Russia that have been selected by the Russian government for him to look at and then does little propaganda pieces about how nice they are, that doesn't give you a sense of the suffering that's inflicted on Russians because of the authoritarian government in a bunch of other places in Russia, aside from the tiny little places that Tucker Carlson was able to look at. But even setting that aside, it's wild they would be so willing to throw away fundamental principles like freedom, liberty, equality, for the sake of a nice grocery store. You know what I mean? Even if their argument were true, it's not. But even so, it's wild how quickly they'll throw out these American values because they have this perception of things being nicer in countries that don't have those values. I'd argue by many metrics they're wrong. But then here he's saying crime. There are some countries, for sure, that have forms of government I don't like that have lower crime rates. One of the things, what I said, the overarching principles, but the other one is our crime rate is overinflated or is increased by our out-of-control gun violence. That's what drives us having higher crime than many other developed countries. And then there's this crazy coincidence where we're also among those same countries the only country that has as many guns and regulates them as loosely as we do. So if Trump actually cares about this, it's not about him throwing out our democratic system, but instead using that democratic system to be a little bit more reasonable with our firearms. Then you have this.
Frankly, so easily. And he was very much into securing the vote. That's why he's the head of the whole. Look, if we can keep the cheating down to a minimum, because these people cheat. They cheat like hell. If we can keep it down to a minimum, we win easily. If we had, let's say, a beautiful vote counter, an honest person comes down from on high to count the votes.
Why do they find this so funny? He's setting up election lies again. I love it. I love it. It's so good. It's so new. It's so fresh. Last thing.
All of the law enforcement men and women here today, I respect you so much. I admire you. And as your president, I will always back the blue as I did. I backed the blue more than any other president.
Except for proposing cuts to funding for policing by the federal government, contrasted against the record funding by the Biden-Harris administration, except for saying you would pardon, explicitly saying you would pardon people who violently attacked, in some cases tried to kill police officers on January 6th. Those people are heroes to Trump, but he backs the blue apparently.